My name is Mark Barringer. I'm the product line manager for database tools from Embarcadero based in the EMEA region, and on this session I'm joined by Mohammed Ahmed from the UK region. He's a senior sales consultant, and today we'll be talking about achieving database schema compliance, and this is actually a specific use case of a customer of ours, which happens to be a large UK bank, a global bank, but we deal with them based here in London in the UK. So this session is part of the Embarcadero Data U Master Your Data series. So the agenda today for this 30-minute session, and we'll have questions and answers at the end, is I want to explain the critical business issues that the bank was experiencing around database schema change, and in particular the issues that they were getting with database downtime and unauthorized changes of database schema. I'd like then to explain the environment that the bank uses to put the schema compliance framework into place. I'll then look at how they went about implementing and discuss also how they tune the framework or the solution that they have. Let's then just take a quick look at obviously what's interesting here is the business benefits that this solution gives to them, and then I'll pass over to Mohammed to he will show you some of the key features of the DB Change Manager Embarcadero product that the bank is using to satisfy their needs for database schema compliance, and then we'll just take a quick review at the end of the key capabilities and some of the benefits again. So what are the critical business issues for the bank in the UK? They have very much a very large estate of applications and applications which have databases at their back end, so they have a very large and varied application and database estate, and the real key driver is that that isn't static. They're continually mergers, acquisitions, they're finding new database platforms that they're implementing to their database ecosystem. They're actually finding sort of legacy database systems as well, as if you like, that they need to bring under schema compliance control. So it very much is an expanding estate of applications, and particularly the databases that they need to monitor. And what really is the critical business issue, I guess, is that very often sort of database outage, and therefore the application outage, is caused by change. And one of the key drivers here is that if we can minimize the amount of unauthorized and unregulated change within a database, we're ultimately looking to basically increase performance and service levels of the databases. So really looking to monitor unauthorized schema change within the production databases primarily, but I'll talk a bit about how they've sort of extended this service to their development and QA services as well. And then due to the ever increasing and mandatory changing and mandatory requirements or regulations, it's necessary for the bank to prove compliance, that they can prove when changes to the database schema have been made, or if there is a particular issue, they can actually go through their version records and pinpoint when a change was made, and particularly that's key if it is an unauthorized change. So let's just take a really high level look at how the schema compliance environment or framework is actually set up. So the bank have a compliance administrator who is essentially a power user, if you like, of DB Change Manager, because DB Change Manager is the Embarcadero tool that they use to put the database schema jobs in place. And a database schema job is one which compares the live, say the production database schema, maybe of a particular table or a particular set of objects, and they can use that to compare against a particular standard, so like a snapshot. So what they're really interested in doing is running a series of jobs that compare database objects in a schema against a standard that they know they're happy with, and ultimately what they're looking for is any discrepancies or anomalies in that. So they have, as I say, a power user, or let's call that person the compliance administrator, who sets up all of these job configurations, and they are continually getting requests from DBAs or other stakeholders in the whole organization who want to add their application and database to the service that they offer here. And what we can see on the slide as well is that one of the key selection choices, actually, if you like, that the bank made in choosing DB Change Manager is its ability to support multiple database platforms. So the compliance administrator can set up many job configurations for different schema with different objects across a whole wide range of database types, Oracle, DB2, Microsoft and Sybase, and they do actually have all four of those platforms, and they also have different versions of those platforms as well. So I know that they're still running some Oracle 10, and now they're moving on to Oracle 12C as well. So that is actually not necessarily a full-time job, but it's a significant part of the compliance framework, is the job of the compliance administrator, and it's key that that person clearly knows what they're doing, but also that they understand the schema and the objects that they are creating the configuration or comparison jobs for. So once those jobs are set up, it's important that, and this is actually perhaps a bit of a skill here as well, is to sort of set up the automated daily scheduling and monitoring. So as we will see in the demonstration as well, is that it's possible, or the way that the bank uses the tool is to set up a series of jobs, and they spend some sort of time, a considerable amount of time, getting the order of those jobs in the right order so that they can minimize the amount of impact that they're having running the jobs against the databases. So the compliance administrator sets up all the jobs and also responsible for the automated daily scheduling and monitoring. But what's the outcome of the environment? And it's basically compliance reports. Well, actually monitoring and compliance reports. So the compliance reports can be provided or delivered to the auditors who want proof that the bank has a history or a track record of being able to prove changes in the database, but also they are looking for unauthorized changes in the production database schema, and this would be flagged by the framework, because DB Change Manager will generate a report if there is a difference between the standard snapshot and the live production database, and in those instances those different reports go out to a different community, if you like. Some might go to the DBAs, some clearly will go back to the compliance administrator as well, but I know that some of the database developers are interested in this, particularly on the QA side, and also their data architecture team is actually interested in these unauthorized reports as well, because they are very instrumental in ensuring that their data models truly reflect the production databases that the bank is running. So that graphic really shows the three key elements: the job configuration, the automated daily scheduling and monitoring, and the compliance reports. So maybe let's just take a little bit more deeper dive into some of those. The compliance job configuration. So with the tool, again, as we will see in the demonstration, there's a huge amount of flexibility in the terms of which objects it's possible to configure into a job. So, and the bank does actually operate like this. They don't necessarily just look at tables and columns. They do look at for different database platforms or specific database platforms, they do look at different objects as well, and they can add those objects into the job, and therefore they would also create those objects within the standard snapshot that they're using. I've mentioned this idea of the multiple database platform support, and the fact that DB Change Manager allows multiple database platform support from within the same IDE. They're adamant that the bank, when they were talking to me about this, that it offers great productivity for their teams to be able to work like that. Again, one of the key driving factors here is the automation. So although all the configuration is done through the IDE, all the jobs are scheduled to run I was going to say overnight, but they're a global organization. So this is where the flexible scheduling really comes into play. So they can schedule the jobs to really sort of satisfy where the databases are located, or perhaps more in particular where the users of the databases are, so that they are always concerned with minimizing the amount of possible disruption to the database and application service. They don't necessarily run all of the jobs every day. They look at how they prioritize the databases, and maybe they also look at how large the database schemas are as well, because clearly the bigger the schema, the longer the job's going to take. So that there's a bit of ordered shuffling going on here, and some of the jobs run daily and some of the jobs run weekly, and I think that there's actually some jobs that run monthly as well, perhaps on some of the legacy database stuff as well. So, and as I've already mentioned, they do a bit of job ordering to ensure that they're minimizing the runtime of the jobs in Change Manager. So everything's scheduled through the command line integration within the tool, and Mohammed will show that in the demo as well. I mentioned earlier that obviously the key driver here is compliance against production databases, but they're certainly taking the same model, if you like, or the same framework, and applying it beyond their production environment and replicating it in not all, but some of their development, test and QA environments. And this generates its own benefits for the people working in those particular departments, if you like. Okay, so what do they get out of running this database schema compliance framework? Ultimately, they get increased service performance. So due to the transparency and the report, so the fact that all of the users, whether they're the DBAs, the developers, they know that this automated service is running against the databases. So one would think that, and they do have proof of this, that they're actually minimizing the number of unauthorized database changes, because basically they know that reports are being run and everything is transparent. So they have noticed, and they've been running this over a number of years now, they've reduced the amount of database downtime because the amount of unauthorized activity has been minimized. It hasn't been totally cleared up, and that actually points to the fact that this isn't just a lip service exercise. It is a worthwhile technical exercise, because they are finding still they're getting unauthorized changes to some of their database platforms. Scalability, the compliance team can offer this now as a service to different business lines or different business units, and one reason I went to see the organization about a month ago was because they want to really scale up, and they're very comfortable with the service that they're offering, but they now want to move, I think, from 500 databases to something like 1,800 different databases that they want to monitor. So it certainly isn't a small service that they're offering, but they're very happy with the framework that's in place, and it's scalable. So, and ultimately, you know, what we're talking about is compliance. This is really key, particularly in the finance world. Sorting out unauthorized changes is one thing, but actually being able to provide evidence to auditors who do come and ask the compliance team, you know, when have changes been made in your database, can you prove who's changed it, or show me who's changed it, what changes did they make, which columns got added to the table, etc., etc. So those really are sort of three key business benefits that the service provides. So Mohammed will now do a product demonstration just to show some of the key features of the product, and will highlight some of the features that I've mentioned in the introduction here. So Mohammed's going to show us some of an example of a compliance report. He's then going to show, and this is exactly how the bank's team work, that we can have multiple platforms supported within the same IDE, and how it's possible to set configurations and folders, so you can have the different databases displayed in folders or according to type. We'll look at how to set up a job schema, a database schema job configuration, and then how to test it, and this is exactly what the bank does. And then we'll look at some of the options in actually creating the reports that get passed through to the compliance, and we'll then take a look at the scheduling. So over to you, Mohammed.
Thank you, Mark. And before I step into the actual Change Manager demo, I just want to briefly go through a compliance report and just show you what you can get out of there in the first instance. So here we have an example of a schema report that I've created beforehand for this session. And essentially what we have here is a schema comparison job for a particular machine, and we ran a scan against an archive. So essentially we had a baseline created, we did a scan, and what we were trying to do is find out what was different. We have details like what the machine is, where it is, which database platform that is. So this was a SQL Server database, which user was used to authenticate, which protocol. We'll have a result here showing us what matched and what did not match. So essentially what we're interested in is what didn't match, and then we can see the detail behind that. So as we scroll down, we can look at the actual code. So let's go down further and look at the code of the database itself. So here we can see there was a if a sync script was to be created, what would actually be created. So it's telling us what the alter would be. So the archive job here in this instance, if I just scroll down, will show us left to right, what is in the system already and what isn't. So as we're scrolling down side by side, it will show us, and you can see here there's a little plus icon here saying that this column is missing from the baseline, the archive, and the code we saw earlier was how to sync that up. That's essentially what we're interested in, and these reports can be configured as and how you need them. So stepping into the demo now, and what we're going to do is we're going to just give you a quick overview of the tool. When you first launch the application, you'll get a welcome launch page like this, and essentially what you have is you have three components of the tool. You have the schema comparison, the database data comparison, and the configuration management and comparison. So essentially we can do three parts of the database itself. And so in the schema section, which is what we're going to concentrate on today, we can compare and synchronize differences. We can capture a version and basically create a baseline. We can monitor and report on changes, and if we wanted to, we could also automatically move or migrate between database servers. This could be ideal if you were in a production environment, you had an issue and you just needed to move that data or database across into a development environment so you can work on it a bit further. The main part of the application is that you have the Explorer windows here. So in this instance we have a data source explorer, and all our data sources, as Mark mentioned earlier, can be managed by either database platform or application type or any other group that you choose. In this instance I've got them highlighted by database type. So I've got my SQL servers and my oracles here. The other thing that you can do is you can give them some additional identifiers regarding whether they're production, test or development. The Job Explorer shows you what jobs have been run, and you can navigate through those and see what's available. The Project Explorer allows you to move through your project and understand what has been worked on. So there may be some batch file scripts that you're running, there may be some configuration jobs, and so forth. The Compliance will show you what jobs were running last, and the time and date, and obviously if there was any failures also. So this is a type of information available within the tool itself. So before we actually go ahead and create a job, what we're going to look at is how to create a data source in the first instance. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click on my node here, go to new, I'm going to go to data source, and we can create database connections for all the main platforms, including the generic JDBC. So we've got the IBM DB2s here, we've got Interbase, SQL Server, Oracle and Sybase ASE. So I'm going to choose SQL Server here, for instance. Those groups that I mentioned, you can have those subcategories, and you can create a new set of groups here. So I've got development, production, test, and QA. Let's just go ahead, and the server can, you can literally just type in the information. So in here I can do UKV Connect. We don't need to necessarily worry about the port because it's SQL Server. We can look at the credentials, so let's add in some credentials and then test the connection, and that's successfully connected. So that was a manual way of creating a data source, and obviously I can give this a unique name, and if I automatically choose what the option in the previous menu, I can have it give this a custom name, or I can choose to generate something even unique. Let's cancel out this now and show you how to do the automated method. So we have the icon here for discovering data sources, and we can either find previously registered data sources using the Embarcadero data sources, that's using the registry. We could also scan the file, system and network, and if there were other applications we could pull in the data sources from there also. So let's look at the two options here. So what this will do, this will search for some existing data sources, and then when it comes back we'll see a number of data sources available to us that we can go ahead and create, and essentially this is a great way, depending on how many data sources you have, it could take a little longer than normal. Essentially you could use a number of methods. So it has picked up some data sources, it's picked up some file system data sources here, and it's picked up some Oracle databases that I had in my network. So it's picked up the oracles and so forth. So that's just an easy way of discovering data sources so that you can start working on them. So I'm going to cancel out this as I already have my data sources set up. I'm going to make sure I'm connected to my SQL Server. So in this instance I'm using a 2008. Obviously you can use other instances also, or other database platforms that are supported. And what we essentially need to do in this instance is go to our schema comparison. We'll right click and create new. I'll just minimize this to give us a bit more of a screen here. And the first thing that you can do in this instance is provide the job a name. So let's call it something memorable, so eDataU, and I'll just give it some more metadata here. So let's add some additional items. So we may want to look at the source. So we already set up on the source. So we have a schema comparison and a schema target. Now you'll notice that I'm able to check between a live source and another live source, or even an archive job. So I have a schema archive job that's available to me, and I'm going to compare against this. You can select against the more recent version or second to most recent versions here. Next we're going to look at the refinements. So in this instance we're able to filter and configure our job. So essentially what we're going to do here is I'm going to just use some sample data and run through this. We can navigate and see what objects are available to us, so we can drill down through and see what's in the database. Next, in the mapping, we just need to understand that the databases are mapped, because this is the same database and same database name has automatically picked that up. Other options that you may wish to choose is whether you want to do this manually or automatic in terms of a sync. In our instance we're going to do this the manual method because we want the SQL script itself. And then some other options regarding whether you want the DDL script to be created and whether you want anything to be ignored. Next is the notification. So this is the bit where you can add some additional notifications to you. So when the job is completed, to be emailed with not only the report but the script also, so you can review the script. We're going to bypass this at this stage. Next, we can look at if there's any other history of the jobs being run. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this job. So I'll go through the system, and what you can see here is done a 100% match. Now that's fine in this instance, but what we really want to understand is, can I, when will it actually show a difference? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another tool to just create a change. I'm just using DB Artisan, another administration tool that we have. And I'm going to go into here, and all I'm going to do is create a change, and we're going to monitor that change within our tool. So let's add a column and call it change. We can give it a value here. Any value will do at this stage. Let's use char, and we'll just alter that to the database. It's given us the script, and we just execute that. So that change has now been completed. So going back to the tool now, what essentially we want to do is see, and what we'll get now is a result showing us that the change has there is some difference in the database. So right now we have a 98% match, so we can see the individual results, and we can view that through and look at stuff that we don't necessarily want to see all the stuff that's matched. We're only interested in the difference. So here's that difference. We can generate the report, and generating the report is straightforward. We just click on the generate report function here. We have a number of file formats. We've got CSV, HTML, XML, RTF, and PDF. We have report preferences that we can set up, so how it looks, what colors, paper setups, the actual content. We may not necessarily want the matching objects, so that's been unchecked here. We only want to include the DDL and so forth, and how many objects we want in there also. And then there's the fonts as well. So let's give that a name, and we'll save it out. And we'll do it in PDF format. Just make sure we can save in the right area. Okay, and we just hit finish. And what that will do is it will provide a PDF in that location. You could also choose to have the application open that up, and lo and behold, we have our report that we saw earlier. So essentially there's the job that's been created with all those changes that we saw earlier. Now the next thing really we want to do is can we automate this, and what we can do is we can generate a command line. So let's save this job, and now what we can do is generate a command line. Because we've saved the actual job, we can generate what type of report is going to be generated automatically. Again, we could have chosen the location. The location could be anywhere. I'm going to use my Change Manager workspace. So this is part of the setting up of the report and the job. And we can choose where to save the batch file. Again, I'm going to use our workspace here. I'm going to put the in my auto-generated batch files. I do have one already created here, so let's just give it a unique name. and then we can finish this out. We can also schedule the report, and that would be just using any job scheduler that you have. In this instance, you'll use the Windows job scheduling. The final thing I probably want to show you is the actual the batch file. So let's just show you how the batch file looks like, and then I'll hand back to Mark. And we can see that the code, the batch file, has been created for us. There's nothing else we need to do here apart from schedule this and have that run via the command line. Okay, so we gave you a good overview of how the tool works. We essentially set up our data sources. We had a previous baseline report created, a previous archive created. We did a schema comparison, we made the change, and essentially we were able to report off the database, understand what had changed. We have the script available to us, and the next steps is what do we do next. So with that, I'd like to hand back to Mark.
Thanks, Mohammed. That was a really comprehensive demo, and that's exactly what the bank in London actually do. And when all the configuration has been set up, the reports have been scheduled and configured, that if you go into the IDE, you can literally see hundreds of these jobs that are in the Explorer window on the left-hand side, but they all run individually according to the automated scheduler. So with that, I'd just like to really close on talking about some of the key capabilities of the DB Change Manager in general. Now, we've seen actually the third point here, that one of the key capabilities is database auditing and compliance, and that's what we've been talking about today. But some of the other key features we can see here are, and Mohammed did mention some of those, database synchronization. So in a development production environment or test to QA or whatever, it's possible to use the DB Change Manager to create synchronization scripts or the alter scripts to sync selected objects. So you can do this to roll forward if you're deploying some changes to a production database, but you can also use the scripts to roll back. So maybe you've made a change to the database, something has not how you expected, and you actually want to roll the schema changes back. It's possible to do all of that with the database synchronization feature. So, and we've also seen track database changes. I did talk about this, and actually the bank clearly used this as well. We can reveal, track and report. So we can create the synchronization scripts, and then out of that we create the different types of reporting. And as Mohammed demonstrated, the reporting is very, very flexible. Okay, so with that, just like to thank everybody for listening. Just to recap on who we are, and please feel free to contact either myself, Mark Barringer, or Mohammed Ahmed directly. You can see our email addresses there. So now we're going to move over to the Q&A session.
Alf asked if DB Change Manager, or is DB Change Manager the tool to version the database during development of a new system before setting it into work? I think Mohammed answered yes, but Mohammed or Mark, you can also use DB Change Manager just to make sure that all the different systems that you have are still in sync or have the same things applied, right? Not just the development system.
Hi, it's Mohammed here. So essentially, you could do like a one-to-many comparison. So you don't have to do just like a one-to-one comparison. It really depends on the way in a company works. So for example, you may have a production environment, a UAT environment, and a development test environment. You can troubleshoot issues in production by then moving that database back through the stages, do some additional work. You may want to do some performance testing, make those changes, and then push those changes back out to production. And the DB Change Manager allows you to do the comparison between the development and test and production databases, so that if something maybe occurs overnight, the first thing that you want to do is figure out what's changed, what has actually changed before you try and go and fix it, because it could be that somebody's put some changes into the system, and it essentially is what's caused the failure. Maybe the SQL statements or the procedures weren't tested thoroughly enough before they were made live. So these are the type of things that can be tested.
I know that I visited a customer in India that had lots of different production sites, and periodically they would do a compare to make sure that all updates got propagated out to all production servers, and to make sure that one wasn't skipped somewhere in the update process. And then another question, could DB Change Manager also document differences in two different layouts of the same database where differences are in the use of relationships? And I know, Mohammed, you put an answer in that yes, but maybe you want to expound. Or
Yeah, so essentially with the database, any type of change, whether it's a foreign key, primary key, whether it's a value on the data types, you should be able to report these changes. But however, whereas DB Change Manager is a change management tool, if you are looking at it more from a database design perspective, then you should really be looking at tools like ER Studio Data Architect, because that has a little bit of overlap with DB Change Manager in that you can do comparisons. And with obviously ER Studio, you do have the documentation of the relationships in a database design, data model format, and so you can have a more of a diagrammatic view of looking at your database rather than looking at it through a SQL structure and object structure view.
what is supported if using an ODBC connected database like MySQL, or it isn't possible to do any change tests? Question mark.
I think for that question we'll have to come back to see what the limitations of the ODBC is for Change Manager.
All right, Deborah has a question. With your bank customer and hundreds of reports generated, what level of staffing do they need to review all of this information? Or maybe you can highlight
that's a really good
differences. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I sort of indicated in the introduction that they have effectively one person who's not quite full-time, who's responsible for configuring any new jobs that come up, changing any existing jobs, talking to the other business units and configuring, discussing the requirements for the other business units. And then, of course, they're actually monitoring as well. They actually use another external scheduler, and that actually produces reports whether the jobs have actually run successfully, but they also take periodic samples of the reports generated from DB Change Manager. So I guess in a nutshell, the answer is sort of maybe half a person full-time, but that person also does a lot of development work with the new business units and promoting and selling the service. So it's not particularly labor intensive, and certainly once the jobs are set up, it runs automated effectively overnight. I mean, if the person wants, sorry, was it Deborah? If she wants more information, she can certainly email me, and I can, if she's serious, then she could possibly even put them in touch with the bank to get more of a description.
Maybe Mark and Mohammed, you could answer this for me. This is a question I always have. I know that DB Artisan has certain capabilities. For example, it can do some profile information. It can do some change information. Does DB Artisan have all the capabilities that you might find in Change Manager or in DB Optimizer, or is there differences?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Essentially, the DB Power Studio suite that includes all the point products, gives you like a one-stop tool chest. You don't necessarily want to fix a hole with a hammer, and you need to use the right tool for the right job. So DB Artisan is our main database administration tool. So you can definitely do the database management, user management, and there is a little bit of change management, but only from like a a visual diff point of view. So you can look at scripts side by side, you can look at scripts versus databases, but if you want to do true change management, then you want to use DB Change Manager. The same example will go for DB Artisan and DB Optimizer. DB Artisan with the analyst packs will give you all the performance metrics, but it'll only give you a snapshot of that point in time that you're looking at. So it'll give you all the metrics and it'll give you all the storage information. It'll tell you that there's a problem and this is the general area that there's a problem in. And then what you do is you go in with DB Optimizer and you start a profiling session, as Dr. Sultan showed earlier in the screenshots. And it essentially allows you to pinpoint exactly where the issue is. So, for example, I had a customer the other day who had a Sybase performance issue, and they were able to use DB Optimizer to understand that it was not actually a database issue, but it was a database storage issue. So they were running out of space on the server. So that was more of a Windows issue and somebody else's issue, somebody else's problem. So these tools are companion tools. They're designed to be used together. Each one is the best of breed in its own right, but you need to choose the right tool for the right job.
And again, the Power Studio, DB Power Studio, includes Change Manager, Optimizer, and DB Artisan, right? Or you can purchase them individually.
So you can purchase the individual point products. However, to get the best value, you can go for the DB Power Studio products. There's two editions essentially. There's a developer edition that will have Rapid SQL, Change Manager, and DB Optimizer, and then the DBA edition that will have in addition to all those, we'll have DB Artisan as well, and then there's a third option that also gives you the analyst packs within DB Artisan, so that you have some more functionality within the tool. So it really depends on which angle you're coming from, what it is that you're trying to achieve. Are you a company that's reactive? Reactive meaning an issue happens and you need to solve it, or are you proactive in that you're always using your procedures to make sure that the code that's administered to your databases is heavily tuned, finely tuned, that when it goes live, your database isn't going to keel over all of a sudden.
And I'll add this question that came up in Sultan's session before. Someone asked about the licensing or additions, and I think for DB Artisan, you could choose a multi-database platform or a single database platform that can still work. Does DB Change Manager and Optimizer have similar licensing?
You have similar licensing. You can have a single platform. So if you're working on just one of the 4 or 5 major platforms, you can choose a single platform license. However, we often find that in many organizations you have 2 or more platforms. There may be a legacy Sybase somewhere that you still need to have access to, and a lot of applications that were developed on Sybase, they're very difficult to shift. So you're always going to have that, especially in the retail banking spaces. And then when it comes to I think back to DB Artisan itself, DB Artisan has a number of flavors. There's obviously DB Artisan Standard Edition, which has a support up to 10 managed servers. Then there's DB Artisan Professional, which gives you unlimited managed servers, as well as the use of profilers and debuggers. And then there's the Workbench Edition, which gives you the analyst packs on top of that. And then comes the XC variety of the platform, which is the multi database platform support. And with that, you get not only the platform support, but as we start adding the big data support, the Neo4j, which is a graph database, you start getting those in the multi-platform support as well. So it really depends on what you're doing. And a lot of organizations are either currently looking at big data platforms, or they're in the process of buying in, and at the end of the day, they need to be able to manage those platforms in a better way. So being able to use a tool like DBRs or Change Manager, will help customers in the future and current tense.
Hi, David. It's Mark. Yeah, really just to emphasize that the use case I was talking about here at the bank was just
one specific feature, if you like, of DB Change Manager. I didn't really talk about the fact that apart from schema management, it's also possible to use the product for particularly looking for changes in reference data. So there's a data compare option. And the third main feature of the product, which the bank doesn't actually use, but they're considering it, is actually comparing the configurations of their databases. So for example, in the same way that you can set up a snapshot of your database schema, you can actually take up a snapshot of maybe your Oracle production configuration parameters, and then use that as a standard to compare against maybe all of your Oracle 10 production platforms. And that also can, just by doing that, can alleviate performance issues as well. If one of the configuration parameters has changed, it might be causing a performance issue in your database environment, in your production database environment. So there is additional capability to the product as well.
If you have multiple, let's say, Oracle servers, does it do comparisons also if you have different versions of Oracle deployed, Oracle servers?
Yeah, that's the beauty of the product actually, and I mentioned that briefly, that in the IDE, if I go back to the database schema, for example, the bank has actually got different versions of Oracle in their production environment, and you can configure different Oracle versions or even Microsoft SQL Server versions in the same job schedule, in the same IDE, and then schedule them through Change Manager. So it not only supports different database platforms, but different versions of the database platforms as well. And sort of Dr. Schiffer in the previous example was showing DB Optimizer, and that's again one of the key attributes of DB Optimizer, that you can actually have Oracle 9, 10 being profiled from within the same tool. So I believe that's pretty unique to be able to do that.
How would you handle incremental changes, pushing data from production to an archive database? Would you use Change Manager or some other tool?
So if I understand the question correctly, incremental changes in the database world are called alters. So if you need to push out an alter, so this is a very, very basic script change. So it could be like in my example, I had a column that I added was change. Then we can create an alter script, and essentially you can generate the sync script directly from the change manager tool and run that as well. So you can generate the script, have a look at it, review it, so you've got full control, and then you can run it. Now another type of alter that you have is called an extended alter. So this is where you're doing a bit more sort of a breakage in the structure of the table. So example, if I'd taken that change column and I'd put it somewhere in this middle, then it would have created an extended alter for me automatically. So there is some intelligence built into the tool to choose one over the other. And the same would apply to other structural changes, such as if you're changing a data type, it would do an extended alter, and so forth. Hope that answers the question.
Source code control integration, Mohammed, Mark, what's supported there?
So I believe Subversion is supported. The IDE is an Eclipse-based IDE, so you can find that you can plug in other things into the tool. So is there any specific source code control platform that you require? Let us know. We'll have a look and see if it's supported.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. And Paul says thank you as well.